Hi, everyone. Welcome to another episode of People Who Inspire. I'm always excited to have a special guest like Yaw on the platform. So as you know, every week I try my best to speak to people whose journeys can serve as a blueprint of inspiration for you. And we always have exciting topics to discuss. Today I have Yaw Amoateng is my guest today. Yaw, how are you? And how's your weekend going so far?
Well, I mean, it's been great. Thanks a lot for reaching out and for organizing this. The weekend has been good. It's just midday now. It's quite cloudy, but I had a good morning walk, and so was really looking forward to speaking with you. I think you're muted.
Yes. Sometimes I think about, people like you, with the kind of busy schedules you have, and I try to imagine how like a typical day is like for you. So like, can you just share with us, like, what does a typical day look like for you?
Top of mind, there's a lot of meetings. Yeah, there's a ton of meetings that you're mostly either participating, you're a contributor, or you're also adding on to the meeting count by also setting up meetings with people because you want to get an alignment, you want to get something going. I think a big part of my day is also usually a lot of thinking, in terms of product direction and doing a lot of writing because a lot of the ideas and things that come to mind or we discuss or we seek to do or I want to share with leadership with the rest of my team usually is best in a written form, right? Because when you're writing, you spend time thinking through the ideas and the things you want to put down. And so a big part of my day also go into that, like really having that moment to really pause and think and put things down. And I tend to do a bit more of that usually sometimes, like after the official working hours, because the working hours sometimes could be a bit heavy, tilted more towards meetings. And so some of these ideas, I get a time to really like put them down when I'm reflecting. And sometimes when I go for walks, like ideas pop into my mind and I, note them down. And then later I have to expand on that, put it into more writing. So my day is typically, it revolves around things like this.
Wow. You made mention of something interesting that like myself I've been practicing, at least I try to do. And that is like really spending time to think. I remember like I shared this with some people I had met a couple of years ago and they found it quite bizarre that, okay, so what does that mean? Like you just sit down and do nothing, like I don't know what your thoughts are, but I think the world is moving so fast that you are always kind of in a never ending chase for something, an objective, a target. And then we don't really spend time to just pause and kind of rethink some of the decisions or even the pathways or how we can even optimize the existing processes that we have, so like how important is this period of thinking, for you to be able to kind of achieve whatever you want to achieve? How crucial is it?
I mean, for me, I think it's important, right? Like before any of us venture into anything, you want to count the cost, right? And so you want to put some thought to it, right? Around how does this evolve, right? In my line of work, you would usually also get a leader or someone in a leadership role share their thought around how they think something should be done, but it's not just pick that because this person said it, so let's execute it, right? But sometimes it's really around interrogating it because they may have that idea, but sometimes have not either thought deeply about it because it's an idea that came to mind and you're sharing it as an inspiration, but sometimes their real intent is not just pick it and go and execute it exactly as I said it, right? And so when you hear a thing like that, you've got to, for example, have some reflection. Exactly what does this mean, right? And even if we are to do it, how does it get done? What are the limitations? What are the obstacles we may have to go through? Is the current platform that we have even engineered to support a thing like this, right? And so it's not just pick and execute, but I always treat it in, at a high level, like in 3 steps, right? Get the idea, spend the time to do the thinking, which is the crucial part, then before execution, right? Because otherwise, I feel the execution could either take a much longer time because we have not thought about it deeply. So you start executing and then new ideas and things that you didn't think about begin to come. And so all of that have to be refactored back into the costing or into the timeline. And so you're just going to get a moving target. And when you work with high performing engineering teams, they want clarity, right? Not something that we are executing. We don't know when it's going to end. How does success look like is what we call it, right?
Yeah.
And so that moment of doing the thinking to really figure it out and offer clarity on this is exactly what I think this instruction means, or this is how we are going to execute it. This is how success looks like at the end of the day, so that when we get there, we know that we've accomplished what we set out to do. There will be other things that keep coming, right? But we need to have some clarity to even get started. And so, and I mean, a lot of the teams I work with are also very agile. So we might have started with something, but we are open to iterating as new ideas, new concepts come in. So it's really also factoring that also into the thinking process and doing the balancing act and calling out areas where specifically, well, here we don't know it fully yet. So we put it into like a crawl, walk, run approach. Bare minimum, this is what we are going to be executing. As we know more, we can move into this phase. And as we know more, we can move into that phase, right? But somebody has to put a structure in place.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's very comprehensive, yeah. And I think this methodology really kind of, there's this whole, I think recently there've been this whole notion that execution is everything. And, sometimes, yes, execution is what is at the forefront of what is celebrated, but we kind of forget that before the execution, like you rightly mentioned, right, someone might have just sat down to think about a strategy, think through, okay, what would be the channel through which we're going to execute, right? What are the resources? What is the cost? What is the time implications, right? What is the societal implications of whatever product or innovation? So I think, yes, you've really captured like exactly what I've been thinking about also, for some time. When I shared your profile, a lot of people were like immediately attracted to, oh, he's at Microsoft. But before we get to your work at Microsoft or how you got there, can you walk us back to like tell us a bit about yourself? Like, what has been your journey, right? I'm also guessing you're a Ghanaian, which is I don't think it's a guess, but I think your surname
Yes,
kind of gives it away. Oh, you are okay. So, yeah. So just walk us through, because one of the things I'm trying to do with this platform is that I want people who watch to kind of take away some bit of inspiration. And I know that getting into Microsoft and even the role you're handling at Microsoft is quite Herculean. And so can you walk us through, like, tell us who is Yaw and, where did you school, and your journey up onto Microsoft? It would be fascinating to hear.
Yeah, I could share a bit of that. So I mean, I'm a Ghanaian, born in Ghana, lived most of my adult life in Ghana. I was born in a little town in Asante Achim called Agogo. And so my parents were health workers. My mother was a nurse, eventually became the principal of the Agogo Nurses Training. So that is where myself and my siblings were born, right? So I schooled at the early days of my life. I went to Agogo Presbyterian Teachers Training. They had like elementary school. I think it was called APTC. That is where I schooled a bit. My parents were very heavy on having sound education. I hopped between, a couple of schools at the early stage till eventually I went to boarding house. So I was at the time, I think boarding schools are no longer popular in Ghana now. But at the time it was a thing, right? So I was boarding house, St. John's Preparatory in Achimota.
Oh, okay.
So I went to boarding house very early, class 4. I was in boarding house, right? Because
wow.
Yeah, my parents lived, in Asante Achim Agogo, and they wanted me to go to this school, and so the option was for me to be in boarding house because I could not be commuting from Ashanti region to Accra every day. So, so I was in boarding house very early, class 4. And I think that is something with boarding schools at the time, that make you independent a bit early in life, and you begin to think for yourself and make certain personal, life choices and decisions. So secondary school, I went to Opokuwari. So I'm an Akatichi, so I went to Opokuwari. But prior to Opokuwari, my cousin's husband, Reverend Joseph Ayi, who used to be the country director for Youth for Christ, I spent some time in their home. I learned a lot from him and from the family. He had introduced me to computers, right? And so between JSS and going to secondary school, at the time I studied, a bit of Microsoft Windows. I think at the time it was Windows 97 or so, and got to play around a little bit. I loved Microsoft Paint. Microsoft Paint was like my thing. I could draw, sketch, do a lot of stuff, with paint and color them and all of that. So that was before I went to secondary school. And at secondary school, there was a computer lab, and I took interest in that. And so I remember we had a geography. I did agricultural science. So I did chemistry, physics, but instead of doing biology, I did agriculture. And so we had, I think, a geography teacher at the time, and the teacher was writing a book, and they wanted someone to draw, some of the geography stuff like the world map and things like that will be incorporated in the book. And I used to go to the computer lab a lot. And so the lab, teacher or assistant knew me. And so I got pulled into that project, and so all the drawings that were in the book, including the world map, I drew all of that using Microsoft Paint. Wow. And so that is what really drew me into computers a lot more. After school, I didn't get the opportunity to go directly to university. And so I went to NIIT. That is where I got exposed a lot more into computers. NIIT Ghana was my school, and eventually also became where I worked. I started working also at NIIT as a software engineering trainer. So I used to teach, coding, as we call it. So I taught C++, databases using SQL. I taught, website development and things like that. My area of specialization was web-centric application development. And so I did that for some years. But inherently, I also used to question whether becoming a developer or a software engineer was really what I wanted to do. I had love for the technology space, but I wasn't sure whether I wanted to be behind a computer coding all the time. And
Yeah.
so I got an opportunity. I pivoted into management and eventually became the country director for NIIT Ghana. And so I'd work in NIIT or the education technology space for 18 years before joining Microsoft. In between, I went to school as well. And so I eventually got my college degree from the Royal Melbourne Institute of Technology in Australia. I started part of my studies in Ghana through what RMIT, which is my college, called the African Virtual University. And so I did the early part of my college studies through GIMPA. And because the Australian university had partnered with GIMPA, at Legon or behind Legon. And so I started my career, my academic studies for my degree there, and eventually moved to Malaysia, where I completed my finals, came back to NIIT, continued working, and then eventually got my master's degree as well in IT management from Coventry University, UK. So this has been my journey. So you realize a big part of it was all like in Ghana, in and out for school and stuff like that. But
yeah,
it was mostly in Ghana. And I joined Microsoft in just before around the COVID time. So in 2020 is when I joined Microsoft and had the opportunity to work in multiple teams. I was initially based in Norway, so I worked from Microsoft Norway and moved to the US. Yep.
Wow. Okay, so where do I start? The first point I wanted to start was, and this is almost true for every guest I have on PWI. There's always an event or someone who kind of nudges my guests into like what they're doing today. Like, for example, you talked about, was it like your pastor or?
Yeah, my cousin's husband.
Yeah, your cousin's husband. Like, and if I look at your story, like that single event, had a very instrumental role in, kind of shaping you into that. And again, when I also look at the other aspect of after secondary school, the ideal thing in Ghana is to just go to the university. How did you feel at the time? Did it have any impact on your self-esteem, or did you how was the feeling at the time that you couldn't, let's say, move directly to the university?
Yeah, I think at the time I was young, didn't know much, and you don't know how your career, your life is going to turn out, and or see your classmates going straight to the university. I didn't have too many friends, and so that kind of, now with hindsight looking back, it kind of like saved me a bit because it was not too much of a peer pressure. It was almost like you were in your little corner minding your business, and so, but when I joined NIIT at the time as a student, I always wanted to go back to college. Like I wanted to go back to the university, right? But it wasn't probably the right time yet. So after, through my studies at NIIT, I started working there, right? And so I became a worker, and then went to college. So it was almost like what people do, like when you go overseas, where like you're doing a job on the side and still schooling.
Yeah.
I was doing that in Ghana, right? And so I remember when I started my college studies, through GIMPA, from the Australian University, but through GIMPA, I discussed with my program coordinator at the time, Mr. here, and asked that the college studies was stressful, right? Like it's a lot. And there were a number of things they required us to do. And especially, this was not like a virtual study, right? We got materials and everything from the college in Australia, but we had lecturers, like we had, professors, instructors on campus who teach. So we go in every day.
Okay.
It's not like you were just doing your own thing in your house. We go in, we have professors, we had instructors come to teach. And so I was doing that and also going to work and, doing that on the side. And so I felt really stressed and discussed with my program, coordinator that I wanted to quit my work and just concentrate on the school. And he mentioned that you have an opportunity to do what people go abroad to go do. And he shared his story with me when he went to, I think, the UK, where he was doing like 2 jobs and still trying to, continue with his college studies and all of that. So that really motivated me and, to hold on to my work and also get my studies going. And my studies used to be in the mornings. And so there's always some motivation, right? Something that inspires you and, get you going. But in a nutshell, to your question, eventually I got my college, degree.
Yeah.
And so it was a matter of time, right? It wasn't straightforward, but I eventually got there.
Exactly. And you mentioned something about inspiration. So what like between that time and before you joined Microsoft, can you mention, let's say, who was your inspiration? Was it like, did you have anyone you looked up to, at these various stages, either, secondary school to working at NIIT or going to NIIT? Was there a person or someone that you kind of went to on a regular basis to kind of get some inspiration, or how was it like? How did you inspire yourself? You talked about inspiration.
I think for me, largely it was my cousin's husband. He's a person that I looked up to. I like how he had modeled his family. He was a pastor, so there was not much, right? But I've really felt that he offered good counsel, right? To my academic life and things like that. In fact, we had discussed about my interest to go to college, to get my degree. And so he was actually the one who spotted this program I talked about. And I remember I was at work at NIIT when he called me and said, "Hey, Yaw, you had talked about your interest to do a degree. I see this degree program being advertised. Are you still interested in getting your degree?" And I said, yes. He was like, "When you close from work, come by the house." So he was actually the one who put me in his car, drove me to Gimpa, and bought the admission form for me to start the program. And so that for me was the moment, right? And it was also because we had discussed it and I had expressed an interest in what I wanted to do, right? And so I think that part of the whole process about mentorship, about inspiration, about having an opportunity to get closer to someone who is in a position that you feel is inspiring to you, it's also sometimes sharing a bit more of yourself. Like we say, being vulnerable, letting them know what your fears are, what your struggles are, and also what you look forward to being able to accomplish. They may not be in a position, Reverend IE was not into technology. He was not a tech person. I'm sure sometimes a number of the things that I did or shared with him, he had no idea what they were about. It may go above his head, but he saw an opportunity because I had shared my interest in going back to college. And that was a moment where he sees that opportunity. And, I got that. I got to be able to do that. Yeah.
Well, I think this would be a good segue to delve into the topic for today, because it's almost like, from my experience, it's almost impossible for anyone to get to the pinnacle without making any form of reference to like a mentor. It may be official or unofficial, but then whoever I speak to, right, that I deem to have succeeded in life or whatever they're doing, they always make reference to one or two people who either encourage them or pay their fees or did something. So, today we're talking about mentorship, how to level up through mentorship. like, first of all, can we start with definition? What is mentorship, right? Is it like someone who gives you food when you're hungry or who pays your fees? Like, what is this whole concept of mentorship? Just by the definition of it.
I think there are different layers to it, but to put it at a very high level, it's usually someone who provide some form of guidance, right? Or I wouldn't say structure, then that also gets into another layer. But someone that could literally, if I'm putting it literally, it's almost like somebody who holds your hand and points you in a certain direction. They would not be the one executing it for you. And it's usually based on things you might have also expressed, where they help you to be able to fine tune or polish some of the ideas or some of the aspirations that you have. It doesn't necessarily even have to be in the same field as you want to go, right? Because there are different mentors, as I'll call them, or, but essentially someone who help you to refine, some of the ideas that you have and help point you in a certain direction is what I would deem to be a mentor. But like I said, there are different layers to it. There are some that are really structured. And so like you go to them, you have periodic check-in. Sometimes they may even give you an assignment to go do, and you come back.
Yeah.
There are also the unstructured ones where they inspire you. Occasionally, you check in with them, you bounce off an idea, they say something that makes you pause and reflect about how you are thinking about it. And so they may be a bit in the distance, but they offer some inspiration to you. And so that could also be a mentor. And then you also have the other level, which is not really like mentorship, but almost like your board of advisors, or people who you bounce off ideas with. And then there are also those that have an opportunity to be in a room where you are not, and they advocate for you. Those will not necessarily be like mentors, but they are people that know you, right? And so they are able to advocate for you when the right time comes. And so it's a spectrum, but putting it broadly, mentors really help guide and steer people in the direction that they want to go.
I think you are a lived example, given the life story shared with us. How Reverend was instrumental. But in that same scenario, right? I see something that maybe you can help us with. Number one, did you choose your cousin's husband, the Reverend, or did he choose you? Like, there's always something I think about when I think about mentorship. Like, do mentees choose their mentors, or do the mentors choose their mentees? And another component, so it's like a two question in one, like who chooses who? And the second one is, from what you've said, that means that it is important for the mentee to also open up and kind of share what their desires are in order for them to receive the right direction and refinement that you mentioned. So how important, how does someone really open up, right, to, let's say, a mentor whom either they have not known for such a long time, and in our society, keeping secret is kind of celebrated in a way, people always keep to themselves. Like, so I don't know whether I framed it correctly, but then these two things, like who chooses who, and then the second part is how do we open up in order to receive the direction?
Yeah, I think let me take the second one first. How to open up. Sure. Mentorship is trust, right? Because I wouldn't go to somebody and ask for guidance, ask for suggestion if I can't trust you, right? And so trust is very, very important. And so that also means that there are some instances where you could be vulnerable before this person, where the person know what your weaknesses are and what are the things that inspire you. And so that is what I would say to that. That to be able to open up, it hinges on trust. And so if I wonder, if you don't trust somebody, how do you go to ask them for an advice? you know but these things are built also over time, right? It's not like you meet day one and it's like you pouring everything out, but you build relationship over time. So really learning how to build this healthy relationship is really the bedrock of all of these, right? I make reference, and I talked about Reverend Joseph Ayi at the time, but I've had other people who have inspired my career forward, right? And I have people today that I really look up to, and I have conversation with leadership in my company that I have had a privilege of getting to know, and sometimes would speak to them and would ask for certain suggestions, advice. And there are instances where I have asked permission that, can I be vulnerable? Like, I have these fears that I want to share.
Wow.
It has to be based on trust. But like I said, it doesn't happen day one, and especially in the corporate world, sometimes it's a bit scary to be that vulnerable, and especially to somebody who is even like a leader in your own organization. It can be scary because you want to show up to be the know-it-all and the person who is going to get all stuff done. How do you show up and say, hey, I have worries in this area, I have fears here, right? But I like the culture at Microsoft that it says, be it the learn-it-all person than the know-it-all person, right?
Oh, wow.
And so you encourage people to be open to learn even when they don't know it, than to show that they know it when they actually don't know it, because you don't want to be vulnerable, right? And so I think that I've had other people in my life who have really inspired me. Some very recently, as I joined Microsoft, some who are leaders in the company. There are some that I don't talk to often, right? But sometimes it's just once or twice in a year, but I take inspiration from them for that moment and the time that I have with them. So that probably is a nice segue into your question, who chooses who?
Yes.
I think it's a two-way street, right? There are instances where you feel drawn to somebody and you see that you feel that there's something that draws you to them, or they inspire you. And so you want to be in their fold. You want to get counsel, get direction from them. And so you, as a mentee, may reach out and choose, right? There are instances also where some leaders really take interest in people because they see some potential and they feel like, I need to help this person. I was speaking with one of the leaders in our company, and I asked the question around what was the pivotal moment in their career, right? And this person shared with me about when another leader saw potential in this person, when the person have not even seen it for themselves, right? And gave them some project to do, where they question, why should they be the one to go do that project, right? Because it was a hard project, and but that is where their career really,
wow.
I personally have had an opportunity, and people reach out to me about the work I'm doing for the Microsoft AI space, Copilot, and I've had an opportunity where there were other senior people in my team, but I got nominated to go work on the project at a time when it was at the very foundation, when we've been trying to figure out what should we build and things like that. And this was someone taking a bet on me and saying that, this person should be given the chance to do this work, And so it's two-way street where sometimes some people reach out to bring others along because they see potential, they see an opportunity there. And then also, or they see talent. And there are instances where you see someone who inspires you and you reach out to.
No, this is quite an interesting take as well. And I think that the struggle is for a mentee, the first contact. So what would you advise is a good approach? Let's say that I'm on LinkedIn and then I come across your profile, right? Okay, so I go through Yaw's profile, everything. What are some of the foundational etiquettes that a mentee should have? Because I also hear from potential mentors that sometimes the messages they receive puts them off from potential mentees. So can you, let's say, share some tidbits on some very basic etiquettes of how a mentee can approach a mentor for the first time?
Yeah, that's an interesting one. I think that, introduction is very, very important. And sometimes, I mean, people get a ton of requests, right? Like, messages and things like that. I know people occasionally would scan through, their messages, for example, things that they are getting in their DM on LinkedIn. And so you want to be able to put out something that make you stand out. Before you reach out to anybody, my recommendation is to sometimes try and do a bit of a background study, right? Who is this person? What motivates them? What do they work on? If they have written a book, probably have you read the book? And that becomes a starting point or sometimes like a conversation starter, right? When you reach out, because you know a little bit about this person. You won't know it all, but you know something that connects the two of you, and you can use that. You can leverage that to get things going, right? If you reach out and say, hey, I see you at Microsoft. I also want to work at Microsoft, so I'm reaching out. That is a hot one to, it's a hot, I mean, it's difficult to swallow, right? Because it's like, one, I'm not a recruiting agent, I'm not a recruiter. Two, I don't even know, like, it's hard, right? Like, what is our conversation going to be about to try and get you hired, at Microsoft? But if it's around something you have seen me do, let's say a project I worked on, and maybe you have some ideas around that, or you find it fascinating, and so you had specific questions around that. It may not even be straight away asking to be a mentee or asking me to be your mentor, but something that kicked off a conversation, right? And through that, we both felt that there is a common ground somewhere. And so this conversation maybe becomes something that gets a bit repeated, right? And so a structure begins to form that, okay, let's check in 2 months. Let's check in a quarter. Let's figure out how this your project is going and things like that. And then the relationship builds and then it can evolve, right? There are also instances where people have very structured way of letting people reach out. If you want me to be your mentor, let me know which areas specifically do you want mentorship on, or how can I help you, and things like that. So that is very formal, very structured. And so with that, then you have to think through when you are reaching out, making sure that you are hitting those check boxes to make sure that you get qualified to be in that pool of people who want to receive, some form of mentorship.
This is very solid, very, very solid. I like the response, because it's always tough to sometimes, like, for example, the example you gave, like, someone just, hey, you work at Microsoft, so I also want to work at Microsoft, and then sometimes, you get a message and people even get your name wrong, and things like that. So, so if you're watching this, please, if you're going to approach a potential mentor, please make sure, like Yaw said, if the person has authored some papers or books or is interested in specific areas, just try and read around those projects or those, things that a person is doing, and have like a common ground, like Yaw said, a common opener to the conversation. So yeah, I want to move one step further. So we've talked about the benefits. We understand how to approach a mentor. We understand that the whole thing is a two-way thing. It's based on trust and so forth. What are some of the, let's say, do nots, right? The red areas, like these are like areas that you don't have to go there. You could, in this instance, you could speak from both. You could decide whether to speak from both the mentor's side or the mentee side. Are there certain things that are like a no for you when it comes to mentorship?
When you ask that question, the first thing that popped into my mind is, especially when you are reaching out to someone, let me phrase it this way. If it's, this example I'm going to give works best, like if the person you are looking to be a mentee to, or the person you're looking to be for the person to be your mentor, if it happens to be in the same, for example, like company, and sometimes if it happens to be even in the same org or unit or department that you are in, try as much as possible not to go to them with problems.
Okay.
Right. Leaders are also people, right?
Yeah.
And everybody goes to them with their problems, right? Nobody goes to them with commendation, an area where probably they are doing well, something that they said that inspired you, right? And so have the flip, right? The first time you get to talk to, let's say, your, I don't know, I'm trying to figure out what is the best structure in other organizations. Like if you take Microsoft, like you get to talk to your corporate vice president, or you got to talk to some leader in whichever organization you are in, or in your company, you got to meet your director for the first time. You don't want the first thing to be how poor you are paid. Right?
Oh no, that's don't do that.
You are the one doing all the work and you're not getting promoted, right?
Okay.
That is almost like a red flag right there, right? There'll be other forms for that, right? Like in big organizations, a lot of these things even go through HR and things like that, that your manager or leader may not even know it directly. And so I would say the approach is usually, why do you want to have this level of engagement? What about me inspired you for you to reach out to me?
Okay.
Right. And so you need to think through that and have that to be almost like the conversation starter. Hey, I joined this session that you organized. You said A, B, C, and D. That really inspired me. Since then, I've gone ahead to do X, Y, Z. Then the person knows that they've had an impact, right? And so that becomes an inspiration, something for the person to be a bit more curious to know more. Who is this person? Because I was in a meeting, I said something random, but it looks like somebody took it and has executed it, right?
Yeah. Wow.
And so having something that, be it an inspiration to you, also inspires the person you are reaching out to for them to want to engage, right? Because there has to be a common ground. It's not always the person pouring into you. What do they get in return? Are they working on a project or something that you can contribute to? Are they doing something that you can add on to, right? It's not just downloading. You should be able to upload as well.
I never thought about it that way, actually. Yeah, because yes, that's a very solid point. Because because there's a perception. I mean, once you're a leader, it's like you are like the problem solver. Everyone is coming to you with all their problems, and sometimes I think mentees also make that mistake of using that same route. So I think, please, if you're watching this is a very important point to really consider, especially within an organization. The kind of a follow up here would be that, let's say I'm in a company and I got a message some time ago and the person's like, I've tried to get a promotion and all that and it's still not working. Like, how can one leverage mentorship, whether within the organization or outside, to level up, like to really get a promotion, like, for example, right? How important, and I know this is quite a broad, but if you could narrow it down to either an example to yourself or any example where someone used the advantages or leveraged mentorship or having a mentor to really move up the professional ladder.
I think that, that's quite broad. But I think what I would say to it is that is where trust also comes in, right? Because if you want to advocate for somebody, you need to be also aware of what you're advocating for, or who you're advocating for. You wouldn't advocate for someone to be put in a certain position where, in hindsight or on the flip side, it comes back to embarrass you, right? And so trust, especially in the specific example that you shared, where someone feel stagnated in their career and want mentorship or want guidance on how can they move up or get a promotion. Speaking specifically to that, trust is very critical in this instance, because what are the underlying factors? What is causing this person not to be promoted? Probably you're good at the job, but maybe you're not good at people relation. You're not good at cooperating and working with others, right? And so a mentor, if the person know you deeply, may be able to identify some of these areas and help you or suggest ways by which you can improve, right? And so that could be something that the mentor could help with. There are instances also where probably you're doing everything right. It's just there's not that opportunity in your current team or company for you to grow into that space where you want to be. And so a mentor could offer some suggestions. And if there are also people in certain positions, strategic positions where they can unlock opportunities for you, could give you recommendation into other places that would help pivot or accelerate your career, right? But specific to that example, trust is very, very critical, very important to it, because if I'm recommending you to be promoted based on
yeah,
yeah.
No, that's important. And let's come to Microsoft, right? So I'm intrigued by people who I see are doing exceptionally well. Can you tell me how you came across the role, and the application process, and like, how did you feel when you got that, nod or, the congratulatory email that you got into Microsoft?
I think it was exciting when I got that, but so I didn't have the traditional route of like putting in the application, and
okay.
I came across people from Microsoft, and through conversation, there was an interest. And so they reached out, and then, we had an interview set up. And so I think from the first conversation, it was like, hey, if you're interested, could you send your resume? And so I don't know what they saw in the resume or what the resume did, but then things led from there, right? But the first interview that I had was really the moment for me where, after having the interview, and again about being transparent, but in a strategic way, because when the interview started, I remember, I don't know what prompted me, but I told the interviewer that though I have a background in computer science and I've done coding and all of that, I've not done it in a long while because I pivoted into management.
Okay.
Right. And so I said that very early on in the interview, right? I think as part of my introduction and things like that.
Okay.
So the interview had progressed to a point where they flipped the script and then I had to write, a code.
Oh.
And I think that for me was a very helpful moment because I'd already made this person aware that, hey, I have knowledge in this area, but it's not something that I've done actively in recent times. And so I remember very well the question that I had to write a code for was to determine if a word is it palindrome? That is the word that
like
if you spell it both ways, it means the same. Right?
Yes.
And so, and I had to choose which programming language that I was going to use to do that. And I was like, gosh, I don't even know, like, I've not done these things in a long time. But those times I remember I used to love like JavaScript a lot, especially within the context of web applications. And so I opted to do that in JavaScript, right? And thinking through the process, like as I was typing the script, I was sharing my thoughts, right? So that the person can get into my head to know exactly why I'm writing what I was writing. So I was talking through what I was writing, right? Whilst I was writing the code, I was talking through. And I think I had an advantage also by being an instructor in the past where I used to teach, software engineering. So it was almost like teaching, right? So talking through what I was doing. But I got to a point where I felt, I think at this point I'm stuck. I can voice what I think should happen, but I'm not sure how I'm going to write it, And so it became almost like doing it on a whiteboard, right? Trying to sketch, this is what I think should happen, and you iterate through the arrays and you do this, that, and that. And so at the end of my first interview, I asked the interviewer, how well do you think I did, right? Of course, I was not expecting an answer. No interview, hey, you did great. I think you got a pass, right? But what the person told me that really I very much appreciated, and by working in a company now, I really, really appreciate that was, hey, there's an opportunity for almost any type of skill at Microsoft, right? It doesn't always have to be people who know how to code, but people who think from a product sense and things like that. And so the person did not tell me that you did well, you passed, or what have you. But a couple of weeks later, I got an email letting me know that the first interview went well, and so I was being moved to the yeah. And so I happened to later have, interviews. I think so that was the first one. And later, I think I had like 3 or 4 other interviews before finally I got that email, to let me know that I did well and that, so that is how the process, in a nutshell, I mean, just summarizing it at a high level, that is how it went. But I had to go through the interview process. Yeah.
Wow. That's that's really an interesting thing, should I like strategic honesty. I don't know how to describe it. Like, the fact that you genuinely, and that's the thing, because it came out naturally, like it was really genuine. It was not contrived. I think they felt that authenticity, and like you rightly said, technical skills can be learned, but the hardest part is the leadership bit, being able to even lead people, right? Being able to imbibe the opinions and perspectives of other people and kind of harnessing those into one cogent idea to be able to implement. That you can't just learn it overnight,
Yeah.
So yeah, I think they saw beyond just the technical aspect of it.
And I think I'll just chip in this also. The ability
please.
to be able to unlearn and relearn, right? I've been in my previous career in education technology space for like almost 18 years. If I take out the time I spent going to college and all of that, it may be a bit lesser than that. But even when I went to college, I didn't quit a job. I was like on a steady leave. So I finished and I came back, right? But so this is like a place where I built my career over all these years. And then I'm pivoting into product management. At the time when I joined Microsoft, it used to be program management, and it was a completely new area, new team, new company, new culture. And so bringing exactly how I used to work before and the things that I know directly into the company was not going to fit, right? There are opportunities for me to use the skills that I had built or have acquired over time, but it was not just going to be a direct fit. And so being able to unlearn that, hey, this is how I knew how to do this, but it looks like this is not applicable, right? And then relearning what is the approach. It's also a very, very critical piece, because sometimes people may say, this is how I know how to do this, right? But I think flipping it to how should it be done, not how you know how, because the how you know how to do it may not be what is applicable, may not be what we are asking for now. But if you know how should it be done, and what you already know can apply, great. If it is not, then it means that you have to learn the new way and get that executed.
No, that's important. So if you just join us, we are just going to wrap up today's episode. But 3 things that Yaw has said: how to learn, relearn, and he said also unlearn. And this is like really critical, because technologies are always changing. Even the body of knowledge is expanding. So what used to be true, a couple of decades ago might not be true. I was watching. Interesting thing, I was watching a video. I came across a video where at the early stages of the implementation of the internet, there was these very renowned journalists who were having this, I think it was a morning talk show or something, and were literally laughing at the internet. We were like, the radio is always going to be, the main means of, connecting people and all that. Like the conviction with which you are saying these things, so nothing true would forever be the same. Of course, the underlying truth or facts will be there, but the way in which it's implemented, how even knowledge is consumed, is going to change. Yeah. My last question, because our time is up, is what are some of the tools that my viewers can use or people can use to kind of help them to either find a mentor or build a relationship with their mentor, and also the other way around? Are there any tools? Are there any platforms? Are there any books? Anything you can share that you think can help people in this mentorship journey?
For book by Satya Nadella and by Asia at Microsoft, but hit refresh if you've not read it. Try and read that. But I think that, for tools, LinkedIn is a great platform, to get to meet and connect with people, especially within the professional space. If you take all the social media platforms, LinkedIn, it's a bit more controlled, a bit more structured. And of course, if you've not, here is just a plug. Use Microsoft Copilot. It's I've heard people say, hey, I don't
Yeah.
want anything to do with this AI. I just want to, I know how to write and I can think for myself. And nobody says you can't think, nobody says you can't write. It's almost like when search engines started, where people had concern about, so you could just go to it and ask for anything around the world and things like that, right? But I think that there is a shift that is happening where you're able to get ahead of things faster than you would usually have spent time trying to dig. But this time is really having conversation with knowledge, right? Of course, the AI models itself are not like knowledgeable because it's been trained, but it helping you to be able to do that digging and providing you with almost like a summarized view of knowledge that then you can pick that and then take it forward to whatever you want to do could be a good avenue. And so it's a little plug here, but if you've not tried it, it's available for free and you could try it. And it could be your side agent where you ask it some of these questions. Of course, it doesn't do all of it, right? So having real human people that you can reach out to and bounce off ideas is always important, and you could start from LinkedIn.
No, that's awesome, Yaw. I'll just share, I think, 2 comments or so that came through. I think this is from Albert Segopencil. So yeah, Albert says, "Wow, Mr. Martin, good to see you."
Good to see you, Albert.
Yeah, he sent a follow-up.
Okay.
He says, "You have always been a focused, intelligent, serious, and proactive person. I'm not surprised where you find yourself now, and I'm confident that this is just the beginning." So that's from
Thank you so much, Albert. It's been I know Albert, yes. So great to see that you're able to connect. Thanks a lot for the kind words. I really appreciate that.
Yeah, awesome. So yeah. So we are 5 minutes over time, but do you have any final words or anything probably that I may have missed that you had wanted to share? Please feel free.
Yeah, I would just say that when you have the inspiration, conviction to do something, go for it. Do what you love to do. It's not always the case where what you really want to do is readily available, but whatever you find to do it to the best of your ability, because that sets you up for the next level, right? I love photography. I do photo shoot, right?
Oh, really?
Yeah. Do I think that I'll become like some professional photographer? Probably not. But I love my work because I love being in technology. I love to talk about technology. A lot of people might not know, but some point in my career, I used to host a radio program. And this probably 2013, 14. I used to host a radio program called the Ultimate Tech Talk. It used to be on Ultimate FM in Kumasi.
Wow.
And Kofi
Ultimate.
Owusu, yes.
Oh, Kumasi, yeah.
Yeah, Kofi Owusu used to be the general manager, so he used to host the morning show, and he gave me a slot on the morning show where I used to, talk technology. So that is my passion. I love things that are in technology, right? And so that gives me the energy and the motivation to go. I love photography. That probably may not be like my career, but because I'm passionate about what I do, I get the opportunity to be able to fund my passion in photography, right? And so there's always that balancing act that you want to do. They may not be immediately available what you really are passionate about, but wherever you are today is the stepping stone. And I want you to please do it to the best of your ability, because that is where somebody will see you and that opportunity or open door will come. I did my best at NIIT Ghana, and I believe that that is where I got identified and I got the open door to be able to be at Microsoft today. And so it didn't just happen overnight, right? And like I said, I spent 18 years in my previous job. So it took some time. You may probably not have to spend 18 years, but I'm just saying, wherever you are today, that is where you are currently. So offer your best.
That's very solid advice. Whatever you find yourself doing, please do it to the best of your ability. Yaw, thank you so much for coming on the People Who Inspire platform. I believe that you have really kind of injected some degree of inspiration to whoever tuned in, and even myself. I've learned different perspectives to mentorship. And so I wish you a great time at Microsoft, and also a great weekend overall, just to relax and prepare for the week ahead. Thank you so much.
Thanks a lot, Prince. It's been great chatting with you, and I hope people took inspiration from this. So thanks a lot.
Yeah. 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 And finally, thank you all for tuning in. I really appreciate for making time to tune into People Who Inspire. You can rewatch this video. It'll be on LinkedIn. It's on Twitter. And I think it's also streaming on YouTube as well. So you can always rewatch it several times and learn as much as you can. I wish you all a great weekend, and bye-bye. I'll catch you again in the next episode.
All right. Thanks, Prince. Bye.